So the following are salvageable clips I found of my reaction back when the movie first came out, in the shittiest quality, so sorry about that. They gave this motherfucker a brow scar.
Am I still the
Ew. Do not break the fourth wall on me. We just started. You sent him to a battle with no armor, not even like a cheap dollar store armor.
Erase all life on Earth. They will burn the oceans. They will flood the cities.
How do you? I'm sorry. Wait. Did you just say burn the ocean?
Hey guys, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but
What is it, Tobes?
You couldn't get him an armor, but you got him a fucking sweater. I'm sorry, Richard is wearing a Christmas sweater.
I've never felt so good.
No. Whoa. No. You don't have to stand on it. You just have to throw it. Just throw it. No, just throw it. Strickler, just throw.
no armor. We need.
Yeah, I've been saying it all this fucking movie. Close your eyes, shut them tight, dream a dream, get us out, dream. Well, you're going back in time. Are you going back in time? What? Okay, I could get around this. Yes, the safe Strickler, okay. So in case you couldn't tell, I hate this movie. And to be able to explain why, I kind of need to give you some context here, right? I first joined the fandom back when the third season of Trollhunters was coming out. I watched the first 2 seasons before the premiere of the third, and this show was just good, okay? It was fun, pretty good story, nice characters, whatever. And something you should know about me is that I hold writing to a high standard unless you have convinced me in other ways to continue watching the show. I'm not really the type of person who likes dropping things I do not like. But the thing about Trollhunters is that I actually enjoyed it, you know? It had like a good pacing. And then I heard that it was gonna be, 3rd season and that's it. That's all you get. I like when they tell me that type of stuff, because there are shows out there that just don't know when to end. And then season 3 came out and, it's definitely a season, I can say that. And I think that should have been pretty indicative of how the rest of the story would flow. This season does what I still consider, to this day, a great disservice of Jim's character, who we spent the last 2 seasons solidifying that he did not need to be a troll to be a troll hunter, and season 3 gave no fucks and decided to make him a half troll. Because yeah, Merlin may have chosen a human to be a troll hunter, but he never intended for it to stay that way. So why the fuck did you choose a human? Now, I cannot be bothered to rewatch the explanation because before the movie released, I used to watch this shit religiously. I have probably watched this shit from front to back like 10 times to its entirety. I feel like I would remember if there was like a valid reason for this, but there isn't, Merlin said something of like, oh, I need a hunter like who can be with the humans and with the trolls or some shit like that. That's bullshit to me, okay? Jim went through a whole arc of being accepted as a human just to be turned into a troll. For nothing. Oh, but what about no? It was for nothing. Why exactly? Because wizards exist. Now, I'm not going to talk about 3 Below because I honestly give zero fucks about that show. I could not be bothered to watch it. But when I heard that Jim was going to be in Wizards, my first thought was like, oh yeah, he's going to be a human again. And guess who was right? Why was he made a troll? Now, to be able to explain wizards, I'm not gonna really do that right now. We're gonna do that when we get to the end, okay? We're gonna explain it along with this movie, all right? We'll get to it in the end. So right now, we're just gonna get to the movie, all right? This movie sucks, all right? And the best way to explain why is giving a quick rundown, all right? I'm gonna give you a short version, all right? Brief summary. I'm not gonna keep you here long because this movie does not deserve it, all right? We start off reminding everyone we got trolls, aliens, and wizards because this is like a CW crossover, whatever. And we are pretty much told what Jim's arc is gonna be in this movie in like the first 2 minutes.
But without the amulet, am I...
Now here's the thing. I'm actually okay with this, all right? I think it's an interesting idea to explore Jim, who became a troll hunter at a young age, relatively young age, went through a lot of stuff, endured it, persevered through it, and then he had to make quite a big sacrifice, giving up his humanity to protect people, become the thing he was destined to be, so according to Merlin, I don't know. And then he's stripped away from this, right? Completely, okay? To the point where he is no longer anything. He is not a Trollhunter anymore. He doesn't have the amulet, right? The boy can no longer yield daylight or whatever. I can imagine there would be like this hesitation to like go back and fight, knowing you can no longer fight like you used to, right? Like that is what makes the most sense to me. Yeah, they sent him to battle without armor. You telling me you can make a sword but not a chest plate?
I repeat, Trollhunter is down. He's never gone without armor. He's gonna get himself killed. When you have a leader, you follow them through the highs and the lows. Pretty sure this is what low looks like.
Shit hits the fan, these two switch places and traumatize me. The group gets arrested, they're interrogated, Tobias does what he does best.
Okay, so check this out, ready? There are trolls, and wizards, and aliens. And aliens have robots. Toby said all that?
And I think you're gonna get a pretty clear view on my stance on him in this video. They get out, and they go to this place, castle updated version shit. I don't know. I think this thing was in Wizards. Okay, whatever. Jim is in the state you expect from a guy who went in without armor to a battle with Titans. Okay. My favorite character pops in, gives him good advice, and then we get this. The motherfucker strikes again. Motherfucker with a space in the middle. A fucker of mothers. Did I mention he's my favorite? Yeah, okay, let's quickly praise this man, okay? We cannot go through this video without praising this man. His grand plan to get close to Jim after finding out he's the troll hunter was to get close to his mom, and succeeded, alright? This man had the audacity. So this girl returns with queen behavior, both metaphorically and literally. And this bitch spends her last moments speaking in riddles. They made a new amulet, and Jim tested it during the battle. Which, I want to blame the fact that he has a concussion. He probably has a concussion. You saw that hit he got? Yeah, he has a concussion. I want to blame that because, why else would you walk into a battle without armor? Again, we have another meeting after, the Titans rose. I'm very sleepy. Queen is girl bossing here. Honestly, she made me want to watch his show because she seems so cool. But the people she's paired up with, yeah, they fucking annoy me, so that's why I haven't watched the show. This girl is the only one thinking of an escape plan, so people don't die. And I don't know why everyone is pissed off at the idea of an evacuation, but okay, I'll defend you, Queen. Don't worry.
We need a plan B. If he fails,
yes, Queen. Don't let the audacity of a white guy define your success. Jim has a little bitch moment or something. These two keep hinting at unfortunate turn of events, ever so subtle. And then stuff in Hong Kong happens that I do not care about. Stuff in the jungle happens. Jim gets a sweater. More action stuff. Jim deals with explosives. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys here. I have no clue what the plan was. Like, I don't remember them actually speaking about the plan. How the fuck were you planning on getting off the thing? Okay, now here's the thing. I've kind of been rushing through this explanation, right? I said I would make this brief, all right? But we're actually going to stop here for a moment and actually take a time to acknowledge that this is where the movie gets good, okay? This is where the movie finally starts getting good, all right? As a writer, you got to be able to praise when an author is willing to kill off their characters. So they killed off Nomura, which honestly was a pretty brutal death, for a kid's movie at least. And then...
Jim, I once tried to kill you. I really did. And now, well, I've never felt so good about failing.
Strickland, no!
They got my man Strickler. These two talk about my man Strickler and also Jim's dad, which... if you've never watched the show, you're not gonna know anything about Jim's dad. And honestly, even if you did watch the show, the only thing you know about Jim's dad is that he's a deadbeat. And the movie pretty much implies that. So, yeah. The only mention we ever got of his dad was back in season 1 of Trollhunters. Okay? More stuff happens. Jim burns his hand and cat dude. I did not write down his name. Okay. This cat dude dies. Okay, bye. Oh, I don't think he died. I think he kind of just, stayed there. Whatever. They get this ball thingy called the Chronosphere. And then they go to Nari, who's in Mexico. And once again, Jim is without armor, of course. They get Nari back. And something, they might as well not have done that because this bitch is still speaking in riddles.
Trollhunter make a 9th configuration. Chronosphere will make right.
Please, Nari.
Time unfolds differently, like a flower. Only
These two fight and then die. Thank you for participating. And then they find out that they're still fucked. Because this book that Blinky has is so stupid. Okay, we get the scene of Excalibur, and my queen is still slaying. Steve goes into labor. Jim is like the riddle master because he finds out what Nari said, and then everyone acts like they knew what the answer was, so fuck them. Jim gets a sword, and then they send off Taco Guy to fix the amulet. And now that I say that, I know that sounds kind of racist. Okay, listen, I don't know anything about this man, okay? I don't know where he appeared. He was just already here, and all I know about this man is that he has a taco truck, so guy from the taco truck goes and fixes the amulet. Okay, whatever. A fire lady, or lava lady, I don't know. Listen, there are like 9 characters, okay? There are more than 9 characters. Give me a fucking break. Jim gets his amulet. Lava girl dies after Toby did something. I think it's something. I honestly don't remember what he did, but he did something. Tobias dies, which is a shame that they finally made him do something useful and then they kill him for it. But okay. Now you may have heard my terrible narration of this with my very tired voice because I just woke up, and you may have thought, this movie doesn't sound terrible. I mean, they're definitely making some right choices. And you're right, so far, this movie has some questionable writing decisions, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, there are some things you can commend the writers for doing, right? And I think that's great. Except that we reached this point of the movie where the writers are fucking cowards. They wrote something worse than plot armor because we got fucking time travel. Time travel, 9 out of 10 times, is a cop-out, all right? It's when writers want to seem like they are badass and they are different from those amateur writers, but cannot actually commit to their decisions. Now listen, I was willing to let this slide, because this is a kid's movie, and also I want Strickler back, so I was willing to just let this happen, whatever, okay? And as, they're talking about them going back in time and whatnot, I'm thinking it's not going to be that bad, they're just going to go back to the beginning of the movie, before all the disasters happen. But no, we go back to episode 1. This kid was moving like the fucking Flash. I don't even watch any Flash media anymore because I already know time travel is a part of it. And the fucking writers actually found a way to make me watch time travel, and I hate them for it. Okay, so the best way for me to be able to explain my biggest issue with this movie is to just talk about the last 10 minutes, like what's happening at the end, without getting mad yet, okay? We're going to talk about it, all right? But I got to just say what's happening, and then we'll get to it, all right? Okay, here we go. We're back at episode 1. Before Jim even has the amulet. And, we're going through like a normal sequence of events. We see that Jim is avoiding getting the amulet. He's avoiding the canals. Jim is trying to keep things as similar as possible to the original timeline, to the point where he is trying to set up Strickler with his mom. Okay. Another questionable decision, but we'll get to it. And then we get Jim telling Toby to take the canals. And then we get Toby as the new troll hunter. Yippee! I'm sick and sleepy. We're just gonna get through this, okay? We're gonna go by parts. Alright, Jim avoiding the amulet. We have been shown what happens when Jim avoids being the troll hunter. We got a full episode that dives into Jim having to be the troll hunter, You can't just not make Jim the troll hunter when we already explored that plot line. Somehow, in some way, this ball thingy had the power to not just go back in time to the first episode, but also rewrite the Wizards timeline. Let me back up. Let's talk about Wizards and timelines, alright? So the reason why I believe that most media fails at timeline storylines is because they cannot decide what timeline to use for the story. So there are predetermined timelines, and then there are what we're going to call flexible timelines. Now, predetermined timelines are pretty self-explanatory, which basically means that things are bound to happen. Now, flexible timelines are not as self-explanatory because it's a broader term. We're going to use Wizards for the examples, even though they don't do a great job at this, but we're just going to use it as an example, okay? Now, I know I said Jim being chosen as a troll hunter was pointless, and there's no reason behind it, and I still stand by that. However, Wizards kind of gives us a predetermined event, because we could argue that Jim meeting Merlin made Merlin aware that he has to choose a human that later has to become a troll to be the troll hunter because it unfolds the events of the story. And sure, that's a good argument, okay? And honestly, if that was the answer, I would not mind it. I think that's fine, all right? However, I do not buy it completely in this case because, like I said, this seems kind of predetermined. And actually, a lot of Jim's arc in this show of Wizards could be seen as predetermined. Like his whole storyline with Dea is considered predetermined in this case. Like even like a little fun Easter, Jim tells Dea to choose California instead of New Jersey for the Hearthstone. So yeah, we have here what would be predetermined events because they actually take us to the events of the show Trollhunters. But then we get a lot of implications of it being a flexible timeline. For instance, none of the future characters remember meeting our characters. So Blinky doesn't remember meeting Jim in the series. Morgana doesn't remember Claire. Duxie does not remember himself. If this was a predetermined timeline, Duxie would remember meeting his future self in this timeline, meaning that it's predetermined, right? So if that didn't happen, Duxie does not remember this, then we can consider this more of a flexible timeline. So flexible timelines are more like if you travel to the past, it doesn't really affect the timeline that you're from. It just creates a whole new timeline, which technically you would think that that's affecting the original timeline. No, you're creating a whole new timeline, but it's not really going to affect your timeline, all right? Your timeline sticks to what it is, all right? It's not changing anything. That would be more like a flexible timeline. So this would explain Duxie not remembering himself because it's not a predetermined event. This was a flexible event, meaning that this happened and this is like a different timeline. It's not their OG timeline. And, this would also explain why Merlin also does not remember Duxie being replaced at first. But we also get a time map, which shows disruptions in the timeline. But this can only really happen if the timeline was predetermined. Predetermined timelines are these things have to happen. These things are going to happen. Even if you did like a time travel going back to the past, which in this case of Wizards, where they went to the past like 900 years ago, and Jim meets Dea, and Jim meets Merlin, they influence to the decisions that are made later on. Those are predetermined because it actually continues that OG timeline. Because that would mean that Jim gets chosen as the Troll Hunter. We get everything that happens in the series of Troll Hunters, everything that happens in Three Below, everything that happens in Wizards. And it would just repeat that cycle over and over because that is part of a predetermined timeline. That's a predetermined cycle that has to happen. Jim has to be the Troll Hunter so that way we could reach the point of Wizards where he goes back 900 years and he influences all the events that happen at the Killerhead Bridge. That is predetermined. But if this was flexible, it complicates things a lot, okay? It does complicate things a lot if we were to say that this is a flexible timeline. It can't be that for one character, everything was predetermined, but then for the rest of the characters, it was not following those same rules. They would have to follow those same rules. And we see this because even then, all the events that happen in Wizards lead up to Morgana. And we get Morgana in Trollhunters Season 2 or Season 3. And we kind of already know why she became Morgana at this point. So this is predetermined. We can't say this is flexible, all right? Let's go back to the movie, all right? Jim not being the Troll Hunter does disrupt a lot of events, all right? We could argue that this is a flexible timeline, but that would imply that one small change did almost no difference. And that's just not how that works, all right? That's not how that works. The probability of the exact things happening that would lead to Tobias being in the same situations Jim was by the events of Wizards is practically impossible. They cannot have that same timeline because Toby and Jim have different personalities and different motivations. For example, we're going to use an event from the series of Trollhunters. In Season 2, Jim is trapped in the Darklands because he is trying to find Enrique, Claire's little brother. Now, why is there this big motivation for them to get Enrique and for them to go to the Darklands together in this whole plot line? Because Jim likes Claire. Honestly, obviously they have to do it. It's something that they had to do eventually because of change things and whatnot. But the reason why it was with this much insistence and that they had to do it so quickly was because Jim likes Claire. And Toby does not like Claire. So, not to mention that Jim is going to make sure that him and Claire end up together. Because that's what Claire asked him to do by the end of the movie. So, already this, with Tobias being the new Troll Hunters, the probability of him ending up in the Darklands, Gunmar being released, and then Tobias being shoved into the deep, what is it? Yeah, the deep, that's what it's called. that happening, yeah, that's very unlikely for it to happen, all right? And at this point, Tobias could still become a troll, right? Half troll. That can still happen. But the events of Wizards that led up to Jim having to be in the situation where he's half troll, half human, and then we see by the end of Wizards that he like became a full troll and then he died. Like, there's a lot of things that would not happen the same way that it happened with Jim. For them to lead to this point of the Wizards plotline, for it to continue in the same cycle without any effects, without any damages, all right? And that's just not even mentioning the whole fact that Merlin chooses his hunters, so their hunters are predetermined as well. So, okay. Another thing that just proves that this timeline is predetermined is Dooksy says it, okay? Dooksy doesn't necessarily say, oh, this is a predetermined timeline, but he says, do not change events of the past because you're going to change the future, right? We don't need to be changing history here. Something like that, he says, all right? Not to mention, Merlin's time map shows the disruptions in a timeline, meaning that this is a predetermined timeline, all right? Which also goes against what Nari was saying about the flowers and how they unfold and whatnot. And Jim going back in a predetermined timeline creates a new timeline because, yes, him not being the troll hunter does disrupt the original timeline, but then this affects any future time travel, making the events of Wizards impossible to happen, even though they are predetermined. Do you see the issue? I wrote this all down and I still don't know how I'm supposed to read this to you guys, but there is a lot of issues that occur by Jim not being the troll hunter. We're gonna move on, alright? We're gonna move on, okay? I'm not gonna fight more about time travel because I just hate it so much. I can feel migraine coming on. Okay. Let's say it makes sense, okay? On the logistical side of things, for my sanity, we are just going to let this happen, okay? Let's say it makes sense. This ending still does something that is worse than time travel, alright? This ending assassinates a character, alright? This ending makes Jim seem like the biggest asshole and dumbest man to walk the face of the earth. Let's talk about Strickler. This moment, however, is the most idiotic thing to do. Let me remind you that this is the point of the series where this man was the villain. This is the point of the story where he tried to kill him in his own home, where he had Angeroth following him around in the shadows. He was attacked on his 16th birthday thanks to this man, technically, because of Bullard. Whatever. Okay, and then there's his biggest crime, and it's with this moment of Tobias. I don't even like Toby, okay? But man, you must hate that kid. I'm just gonna break down in bullet points all the things Jim went through while being the troll hunter, and I think that's gonna deliver my case, alright? No particular order. Here are some of the things that Jim went through as the troll hunter. His fight with Draw, dealt with the Stalkling, got struck by lightning, fought Strickler as a changeling, fought Brular, got paralyzed by Angeroth, went into the Darklands. I know what I said before, but yeah. I know this is not something that could apply to Toby, but technically he would have gone to the Darklands anyway. Anyway, the Tribunal sends him to the Deep, which again, it kind of relates more a bit to the Darklands plotline because, yeah, whatever. Jim turns into a troll, fought Gunmar, technically fought Morgana. and these are just like more of the surface level things, but you kind of get the gist, right? Making Toby the troll hunter pretty much implies that he will go through the same things, at least like the beginning things, right? And then we have no idea what he'd go through, but I'm sure he wouldn't be too happy. Oh, but he can guide Toby in the difficult moments and in the beginning of that. That's not really helpful. How about you help him by avoiding most of the things altogether, like the whole Darkland plot, which also would avoid the Exile to the Deep plot, okay? Instead of making your friend go through your suffering, how about you just become the troll hunter again? And now that you know better, you avoid a lot of the things. Like, heck, you could avoid the Darklands plotline too by just avoiding Enrique getting kidnapped. Like, that was your main concern. That's why you went to the Darklands so early and so eager, alright? You could do that, and then you won't get exiled. You won't get exiled, alright? How does that feel? Arg won't die, huh? How does that sound? Does that not sound better than making your friend suffer through all of that and just sitting on the sidelines? Like, imagine explaining that to your friend, like, oh yeah, I used to be the troll hunter and then I went back in time and I made you the troll hunter. So you were okay with me going through those things instead of just going through them again? Well, the way I saw it was like, time unfolds differently, like a flower. What the fuck does that mean? That's it. I don't have a voice anymore. I lost my voice doing this. I think you could tell. I'm sleepy, I'm tired, I'm sick. I just wanted to complain about this movie, and I did, so we're done here. We could go. Bye. Yeah, bye.